You have probably heard of the narcissist. You have probably heard of the psychopath. You have probably been warned about the manipulator, the person who takes without giving, who uses without caring, who destroys without feeling anything about the destruction they leave behind. And those warnings are valid. Those people are dangerous. But there is another type of person that nobody warns you about. A type that is, in many ways, more dangerous than any of them. Not because they feel nothing, but because they feel everything. And they use that feeling, that extraordinary ability to understand exactly what you are experiencing, exactly what you need, exactly what you fear. Not to help you, to control you. This is the dark empath. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why the most dangerous person you will ever meet is not the one who cannot feel your pain. It is the one who can feel it perfectly and chooses to use it against you. Stay until the very end, because the final part of this video, how to recognize a dark empath before they get close enough to use what they know about you, is the part that will protect you in ways nothing else can. Part 1. What a dark empath actually is. To understand the dark empath, you first need to understand what empathy actually is. Empathy is not just feeling sad when someone else feels sad. It is the ability to step inside another person's experience, to feel what they feel, to understand not just intellectually, but viscerally, from the inside, what it is like to be them in this moment. Most people have some degree of this ability, and for most people, when they truly feel what someone else is feeling, it creates connection, compassion, the desire to help. But empathy is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for building or for destruction. The dark empath has a level of empathic ability that most people will never approach. They can read a room in seconds. They can sense the emotional undercurrents of any conversation. They can identify your deepest needs and your deepest fears, often before you have consciously identified them yourself. And then, instead of using that extraordinary insight to connect with you genuinely, they file it. They catalog it. They hold it carefully and patiently until the moment when it becomes most useful to them. Research published in the journal Personality and Individual Differences identified the dark empath as a distinct personality type, one that combines high empathic ability with the dark triad traits of narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. The result is something that the researchers described as potentially the most dangerous personality type of all. Not the coldest, the most dangerous. Because cold people are visible. Detached people trigger your instincts. The person who clearly does not care about you activates your self-protective responses. But the person who understands you perfectly, who makes you feel more seen and more known than you have ever felt, bypasses every alarm system you have. They get all the way in, before you ever see what they brought with them. Part 2. How the dark empath is different from every other dangerous person. Here is what makes the dark empath categorically different from the narcissist, the psychopath, or the covert manipulator. The narcissist is ultimately limited by their inability to truly see anyone other than themselves. Their manipulation is real, but it is blunt. It operates through dominance, through ego, through the crude leverage of making you need their approval. The psychopath feels nothing, and that absence of feeling, while it makes them capable of extraordinary cruelty, also limits their range. They cannot connect. and they often do not care enough to do the sustained, patient work that real psychological influence requires. The dark empath has none of these limitations. They can connect, genuinely, warmly, in ways that feel completely real, because in a certain sense, they are real. The dark empath actually does feel what you feel. They actually do understand your experience. The connection is not entirely performed. What is performed, what is calculated and deliberate and cold at its core, is what they choose to do with that connection. They use the real understanding to create real trust, real vulnerability, real openness, and then they use what you trusted them with. Part 3. The 7 signs you are dealing with a dark empath. Sign number 1. They understood you faster than anyone ever has. Think about the beginning of your relationship with this person. How quickly did they seem to understand you? How soon did it feel like they just got you, in a way that even people who had known you for years did not quite manage? That extraordinary speed of understanding is the dark empath's most distinctive characteristic, and it is the thing that makes them so immediately compelling. Because feeling truly understood is one of the deepest human needs that exists. And when someone satisfies that need, when someone looks at you and sees you completely, it creates an attachment that is almost impossible to resist. The dark empath knows this, and they deploy their empathic ability deliberately in the early stages of any relationship to create exactly this feeling as quickly and as intensely as possible. The speed is not a sign of compatibility. It is a sign of skill. Sign number 2. They know exactly what to say in every moment. Normal people, even very emotionally intelligent people, sometimes say the wrong thing. They misjudge the moment. They offer advice when you needed empathy. They go quiet when you needed them to speak. They speak when you needed silence. The dark empath almost never does this. They have an almost uncanny ability to read exactly what each moment requires and to deliver it with precision. The right words at the right time in the right tone. And in the beginning, this feels like a profound gift, like finally being with someone who truly knows how to be present with you. But pay attention to how it feels over time, because the dark empath's precision is not born from genuine care. It is born from careful observation, from cataloging your responses, from learning your emotional patterns the way a chess player learns an opponent's moves. Sign number 3. Your vulnerabilities always, eventually, come back around. This is the sign that cuts deepest, and the one that takes longest to see. At some point in an argument, in a moment of tension, in a situation where the dark empath needs leverage, something you told them in confidence comes back. Not necessarily directly, not necessarily cruelly, but precisely, in exactly the form that will have the most impact on you specifically. The fear you mentioned once in a vulnerable moment, the insecurity you shared when you trusted them completely, the wound from your past that you thought was safe with them. They held it patiently, and they used it. Not because they forgot what it meant to you, but because they remembered exactly what it meant to you and waited for the moment when that specific knowledge would be most useful. Sign number 4. Empathy turns on and off depending on whether it serves them. The most revealing test of any dark empath is simple. Watch what happens to their empathy when being empathetic would cost them something. When acknowledging your pain would require them to take responsibility. When understanding your perspective would mean admitting they were wrong. When feeling what you feel would inconvenience their agenda. In those moments, the empathy disappears. Not gradually, instantly, completely. The person who understood your experience so perfectly a moment ago now cannot seem to comprehend the most basic human feeling you are expressing. That on-off quality of their empathy is the single clearest diagnostic of a dark empath. Because genuine empathy is not selective. Genuine empathy does not check in advance whether it is convenient before being felt. The empathy that evaporates the moment it becomes a cost rather than a benefit was never empathy at all. It was a strategy. Sign number 5. They are extraordinarily good at managing how others see them. The dark empath's social intelligence is not limited to one-on-one interactions. It extends to their entire social environment. They understand intuitively and precisely how to manage the impression others have of them. They know which version of themselves to present in which context. They know how to build a reputation that protects them. They know how to position themselves as the reasonable, warm, emotionally intelligent person in any situation, including situations where they are the one causing harm. Which means that when things go wrong between you and a dark empath, the social environment around you often becomes part of their defense. They have already been building a narrative, already been managing perceptions, already ensured that their version of events is the one most people will find credible. And you, who trusted them enough to not be managing anyone's perceptions, are left trying to explain something that sounds, from the outside, like jealousy or oversensitivity or personal difficulty. Sign number 6. Conversations leave you feeling subtly managed. This one is hard to articulate, but you have felt it. You have conversations with the dark empath that seem open and genuine and warm. And afterward, you feel okay, maybe even good. But something is slightly off. Something about the conversation felt like it had a direction, like you were being steered, just a little, toward a conclusion that served them. Not obviously, not crudely, with extraordinary skill. The dark empath's conversations are rarely random. They are almost always moving towards something. Information they want to extract, a perception they want to create, a position they want you to hold.
And their empathic skill means they can do this so smoothly, so warmly, so convincingly, like genuine connection, that you rarely notice the steering at all. You just find yourself having arrived somewhere you did not entirely intend to go. Sign number 7. Something feels wrong, but you cannot name it. The final sign is perhaps the most important. With most dangerous people, your instincts give you clear signals. Something feels wrong. Something feels threatening. Something activates your self-protective responses even when you cannot yet articulate why. With the dark empath, those signals are suppressed. Because they feel so much like the opposite of dangerous. They feel safe, warm, understanding, like exactly the person you have been looking for. But underneath that feeling of safety, if you look honestly, there is something else. A subtle unease. A quiet sense that something is not quite what it appears to be. A feeling that you are never entirely sure where you stand. Trust that feeling. Not instead of your positive experience of them, but alongside it.
because the dark empath is extraordinarily skilled at making you ignore your instincts, at giving you enough genuine warmth that the quiet alarm under the surface seems like paranoia rather than perception. It is not paranoia. Your instincts are not wrong. Part 4. Why the dark empath is the most dangerous of all. Here is the thing that researchers found that changed how psychologists think about dangerous personality types. In a study that compared dark empaths, narcissists, psychopaths, and people without dark triad traits, the dark empaths reported higher levels of well-being and had more positive social relationships than the other dark triad types, which means they are better integrated, better camouflaged, more sustainable in their relationships. The narcissist eventually shows their hand. The psychopath eventually reveals their coldness. But the dark empath can maintain the performance, can sustain the warmth, the understanding, the connection, for years, decades. And because they can feel what you feel, even as they use it against you, they experience something the pure psychopath does not. They experience the satisfaction of connection alongside the satisfaction of control, making them not just more dangerous to you, but more rewarding for them to be exactly as they are. Part 5. How to protect yourself. First, watch actions over time, not understanding in the moment. The dark empath's greatest strength is the immediate depth of their understanding. Your greatest protection is time, because patterns cannot be hidden forever. The selective empathy, there when it serves them, gone when it costs them, becomes visible over time. The use of vulnerabilities, patient, precise, always finding the right moment, becomes recognizable over time. Do not evaluate people based on how well they understand you in a single conversation. Evaluate them based on what they do with that understanding across months and years. Second, notice what happens when their empathy would cost them. This is the test. The single most reliable way to distinguish genuine empathy from strategic empathy. Create conditions, naturally, not artificially, where being empathetic toward you would require the person to take responsibility, acknowledge fault, or prioritize your needs over their own. And watch carefully. Genuine empathy shows up in those moments. It costs something, and it pays that cost. Strategic empathy evaporates precisely when it would become expensive. Third, protect your vulnerabilities until trust is established over time. The dark empath's most powerful weapon is what you tell them in vulnerable moments, what you share in trust, what you reveal when you feel most understood. This does not mean never being vulnerable. It means being thoughtful about the pace at which you share the deepest things. Real trust is built slowly, over time, through consistent action. The person who makes you feel safe enough to share everything immediately, who creates intense intimacy very quickly, may be using your instinct for connection against you. Let time be part of the equation. Always. Fourth, trust the subtle unease. The dark empath cannot entirely suppress your instincts. The subtle sense that something is slightly off, that conversations leave you feeling slightly managed, that you are never quite sure where you stand. These are real signals. Do not dismiss them because the overall experience of the person feels warm and safe. Hold both things at once. The warmth is real. The unease is also real.
and the unease deserves investigation rather than suppression.
5th, observe how they treat people who cannot give them anything. The dark empath's empathy is strategic, which means it is calibrated to who can give them something. Watch how they treat people who have nothing to offer them. Service workers, people with no status, people who cannot advance their interests in any way. Strategic empathy tends not to extend there because there is no return on investment. Genuine empathy does not do a cost-benefit analysis before deciding whether to be felt. The truth you need to hear. Here is what I want to leave you with. Understanding that dark empaths exist, that someone can feel your experience genuinely and use that feeling strategically, does not mean you should close yourself off. Does not mean vulnerability is dangerous. Does not mean that being deeply understood is something to be suspicious of. It means that you deserve to have the full picture. You deserve to know that genuine empathy and strategic empathy can look identical in the moment and are distinguished only by time, by consistency, and by what happens when empathy would cost something. You deserve to know that your instincts, even when they are contradicting a feeling of warmth and safety, deserve to be heard. And you deserve to know that the person who is right for you, the genuinely safe person, the one whose empathy is real and consistent and present, even when it costs them, exists. They are not as immediately intense as the dark empath. They are not as extraordinarily precise in knowing exactly what you need in every moment. But they will still be there, seeing you, understanding you, and using that understanding to love you better, not to control you. That is the difference that everything else comes down to. If this video helped you, please share it with one person who needs to see it. Because somewhere right now, someone is in the warmth of a dark empath's attention, feeling more understood than they have ever felt, not yet knowing what that understanding is being filed away for. And they deserve to have this information before it is used against them. Subscribe, because what is coming next on this channel goes even deeper into the psychology that protects you in the relationships that matter most. I will see you in the next one.